Dave Gita. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Tenzing Managed IT Services, and I'll be one of the presenters today. Also joining us is our great partners over at Indaba. Ryan, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Hi, everyone. This is Ryan Shields. I'm the CEO of Indaba. We are a Magento partner and a e-commerce design, development, and marketing specialist based in Denver, Colorado, with offices around the nation and in the UK as well. We're very excited to be partnering with Tenzing, specifically on this webinar, and we hope that everyone finds it very useful, and we're looking forward to going through it with you and answering questions at the very end. My pertinent details are on this slide here. Please do not note them down, and we'll get going right away.
Thank you, Ryan. And so why don't we go ahead and dive into our agenda for the presentation today. We're going to talk a little bit about responsive design and why it's critically important. We won't spend a lot of time on this particular subject, as everyone is probably well aware of the benefits of responsive design. But very quickly, we'll also get into going beyond just responsive design and applying responsive design principles to other areas of our online retailing operations, things like development, the infrastructure that powers our web stores. We'll also chat a little bit about responsive content delivery and something we also call proactive maintenance. All other areas of operations, but ones where we're applying responsive design principles to them in order to help you all deliver a remarkable customer experience. Next slide, please.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So, what I wanted to tackle immediately is, why responsive? And again, as Dave said, we'll touch very quickly on this since the benefits are obvious. But what we wanted to really touch on is possibly stating the obvious, that customers want to choose how they interact. They're more technically savvy. They have multiple devices on them at all times. They're interacting with your brand across many of those devices several times a day. So they really want to choose how they interact with your site. Multi-channel shoppers are spending 77% more on your site than ever before, and a quick study will show that between 20 and 25% of your average visitor is coming from a mobile or tablet device, which represents your biggest opportunity. But also, if it's not done properly and with the right approaches and principles, that 20 to 25% can really start cannibalizing the traffic on the traditional desktop experience. The way we see it at Indaba, and I know that Tenzing will agree, is mobile is not just emerging; it is absolutely invading. And although your customers are experiencing your site on a different size, your objective for how you handle them should be the same, but don't assume that your users' goals are the same on mobile devices as they are on desktop. Next slide, please. Which takes us into responsive development. Responsive design is really only the beginning. You need to go beyond multi-device. If anyone follows Magento as a company, the release of Magento Enterprise 1.14 included an embracing of responsive web development, which is fantastic. There's a very positive step forward and with the responsive so-called trend. But as a company, we have been supporting and pushing forward the envelope with responsive web development for quite a number of years. The way we see it is not a trend or a toolkit. It is absolutely a process. And what that means is it has far-reaching consequences for you and your business. There is not a set it and forget it approach here. You're really opening up a lot more opportunity as well as challenges to your business as you embrace the responsive web development principle. Again, it's not a trend or a toolkit. It's a principle. It is a process. And we aim to really kind of run through with you today how to support the responsive web development principle as a whole. I'm going to hand over to Dave to just go through some traditional infrastructure of where we've come from an infrastructure point of view and where we're heading to with responsive.
Thank you, Ryan. We've been powering our online retail initiatives on traditional infrastructure for years now, and over those years we've dealt with a number of intractable challenges. First and foremost is a level of inflexibility that one faces when you're dealing with bare metal infrastructure. It takes time to deploy that infrastructure, configure it, tune it optimally to deliver a remarkable shopping experience. And that inflexibility leads to a number of other challenges. First and foremost, an inherent vulnerability to unexpected demand. It used to be decades ago that we as marketers could control the levers of demand with a fair amount of accuracy. We'd spend money to generate demand, and if we wanted to tamper demand down, we'd spend less money. In today's world of marketing, marketers have actually very little control over most of the important levers of demand, especially avenues like social media, for example. And because of that and the inherent inflexibility in bare metal infrastructure, that leaves retailers vulnerable to these unexpected spikes in demand, which can occur with some frequency these days. Now, one of the ways that you hedge against that vulnerability is by overspending for infrastructure. Specifically, what most retailers try to do is identify or calculate what their expected peak demand is going to be, and then they purchase infrastructure to meet that peak demand. The challenge there is they're overbuying for infrastructure, and with retailers' margins being respectively pretty respective and conservative. We're talking single-digit margins here. Overbuying for infrastructure eats into those margins, affecting the underlying performance of that retailing initiative. The other challenge with bare metal infrastructure is that it presents a challenge, especially when retailers begin to expand geographically. Very often, the hosting providers that they work with, if they do have a global presence, that their ability to actually deliver infrastructure in a reliable, predictable way varies from region to region, which leads some retailers to actually engage multiple hosting providers to help supply their need for geographic expansion, with all the inherent challenges of managing multiple vendor relationships. Again, all while trying to deliver a consistent brand experience to their shoppers. Now, next slide, please. Now, what's interesting here is we're beginning to see the evolution now for a number of years of very responsive infrastructure, which is in a way is a reaction to some of these inherent challenges that retailers have been dealing with for years. Most folks would tend to consider this cloud infrastructure, cloud computing, and so that's specifically what we mean when we mean responsive infrastructure. And the neat thing about cloud infrastructure is that in theory it scales when you need it based on demand. So it addresses things like unexpected demand, seasonality of a retailer's online business, and because it scales, it enables retailers to more effectively deliver a consistent, remarkable customer experience, even in the face of peak demand or unexpected demand. The other nice thing about this responsive cloud infrastructure is that the costs actually scale in line with demand. So you're actually able to more effectively match the infrastructure you need with the demand that you're being met with in real time, which has a direct impact, positive impact on margins. And especially with some of the larger cloud providers like Amazon Web Services, for example, that infrastructure can literally be deployed almost anywhere in the world. Amazon, for example, has over 50 data centers around the world where you can deploy cloud infrastructure in a matter of minutes or hours, depending on the complexity of the environment. So these larger cloud providers really help address this need to quickly and rapidly and consistently expand into other geographic areas. Next slide, please. Now, one of the challenges with deploying Magento on AWS, there are essentially two. One is, how do you take Magento, software that's been developed during the era of bare metal infrastructure, and how do you actually optimize that for these cloud environments to optimally run Magento? And the other challenge inherent in these cloud environments is management. Amazon is incredibly robust flexible, scalable platform, but it's also very challenging to manage. And this is both in terms of understanding what types of infrastructure to assemble on Amazon and combining those in ways to deliver optimal performance and scale for Magento. It also applies to managing costs. Because again, with unexpected demand and peak traffic, you're not paying a consistent price month to month. There's variability in your cost structure that needs to be monitored, managed, and maintained. And so to really leverage these platforms, it's important to work with a partner that understands the underlying infrastructure, understands Magento, and can deliver a set of both core managed services, things like monitoring and troubleshooting, patching, backups, et cetera, but also can deliver some more advanced managed services around things like site optimization, load testing, and application performance monitoring. I guess the message here is cloud is there for Magento, it's ready, but it's important to make sure that you've assembled the right set of partners to help you actually execute on that platform. Next slide, please. Now, along with responsive infrastructure, another area where it's really important to apply these responsive design principles is in content delivery. Imagine, you have shoppers. For some of you, these shoppers could be almost anywhere in the world, running on a plethora of different device types with different browsers running on those device types, all running on different networks. And in order to effectively deliver a consistent and remarkable experience to all those shoppers, it's important to apply some strategies that specifically address this proliferation of devices and browsers and networks, and one that focuses on delivering that same consistent, remarkable brand experience, no matter where your shoppers are shopping. And in order to really effectively do this, it requires two disciplines. One is front-end optimization, which we'll be talking about in a minute, and the other is content caching. And that combination can really help you deliver that fast, responsive, remarkable customer experience. With that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Ryan, and if you wouldn't mind transitioning to the next slide, he'll get into some of the details around these front-end optimization techniques. Ryan?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So as the slide shows, we've broken down the front-end optimization techniques into 6 rather broad categories as the front end goes, from HTML to CSS to JavaScript, images, URLs, and caching. Everything that basically can be a burden on your site, and especially whether it's on bare metal or on cloud, that if not handled properly can really drain the resources of your site and impact performance and therefore usability from a user point of view. I'm going to list out a number of steps that are essentially DIY steps to optimize many parts of your website under each of these broad categories. And we can dive a little deeper into them as we progress through the presentation. But to kick off on the HTML side, a very common step is to minify your HTML, enable gzip compressions and prefetch assets, and specify a character set. With everything that I'm talking about here, essentially what you're wanting to do is really clean house. We don't want any unnecessary, inefficient code lying around on your site that is increasing the footprint of your code unnecessarily. Walking over to CSS, you'll want to combine your CSS files. Again, minify CSS, put your CSS in the head. Load CSS before JavaScript and remove unused CSS, again in the name of cleaning house. You'll want to use efficient CSS selectors, enable gzip compression, avoid CSS at import. From a JavaScript point of view, you'll want to combine JavaScript files, again, just minimizing that footprint of your code. Minify the JavaScript, again, we've used the minify term quite a lot here, and we will continue to do so. You'll want to load third-party assets asynchronously. That obviously helps from a time and efficiency point of view. You want to load the JavaScript after the CSS, since that's going to be a lot better, more efficient use of resources from a server point of view. With that in hand, defer the loading of the JavaScript and defer the parsing of the JavaScript as well. Enable the gzip compression of JavaScript, and use intelligent script loaders for parallel processing. As again, where parallel makes sense, that's where you want to do it. You don't want to run parallel processes where you're going to increase the burden and effort of the site. And you want to avoid using document.write parentheses. From an images point of view, you want to combine your images using CSS sprites. You want to compress the images so that you're not loading massive images on a small device. You want to specify image dimensions. Don't rely on your site to do all the hard work to compress based on browser, based on device. You want to serve scaled images, therefore, as well as use data URIs. From a URL point of view, avoid bad URL requests. That's just, again, unnecessary, burdensome work that your site should never have to do in the first place. You want to use domain sharding for parallel processing. Serve assets from a single URL, which is obviously good for SEO point of views as well. Serve static content from a cookieless domain, and minimize DNS lookups. Again, it's just all about efficiencies and the smallest amount of work and the smallest footprint as well. From a caching point of view, use browser caching, make redirects cacheable, and use proxy caching. All of those items that I've listed can be a lot of work and very manual, heavy effort. I'm going to hand over to Dave to talk about some common approaches where you can really automate a lot of this and really relinquish a lot of the effort to some of these tools that we've identified as being best practice. And with us being essentially a code shop, anywhere we can gain efficiencies by automating, using automated tools, it makes for a lot quicker turnaround time from a development point of view, which obviously saves our customers money at the end of the day. Over to you, Dave.
Thank you, Ron. And when it comes to common approaches, for a variety of reasons, some that Ryan has mentioned, there tend to be three approaches that most retailers take. The first is doing some form of do-it-yourself front-end optimization. And the two most common here, because they represent the lowest hanging fruit, are gzip compression and minification. Although those do have some inherent challenges, especially with minification. If anyone's ever had to try to troubleshoot minified code, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. There's an inherent challenge to even managing the minification process. But again, these representing the lowest hanging fruit, they tend to be what most retailers begin to tackle as they're getting into front-end optimization. Along with these do-it-yourself front-end optimization techniques, obviously retailers for years have been leveraging content delivery networks like Akamai and Limelight, for example, which help push that content further out to the edges of where their customers are actually doing their shopping. And that can help to a certain extent, and certainly in combination with the do-it-yourself front-end optimization techniques that we've talked about, can dramatically improve site performance. But Ryan also mentioned earlier, and this holds true for what we're talking about here, that responsive anything is a process. And so managing all of that over a period of time as your site evolves and you're adding more and richer content to your site becomes quite a bit of overhead. And what we've seen in the last few years is the rise of automated site optimization solutions that automatically combine front-end optimization techniques and content delivery. And these services, again, not only automated, but also delivered entirely as a packaged service, which requires no administration on the retailer's part. And in our experiences with the service we offer at Tenzing, called Site Optimizer, we've seen some of our retailers increase page performance by as much as 80%. And that's with no code changes to your site, simply leveraging this automated solution. So in my humble opinion, automated is definitely the way to go. Saves you a lot of time, a lot of effort, and you can see dramatic improvement in your page performance simply by leveraging these technologies. Next slide, please. Now that leads us into another area that we call proactive maintenance. And proactive maintenance at its heart is really a methodology that employs a couple of technologies that have emerged in the last in the last decade or so, but when used in combination can be used to powerful effect. And these two technologies that we'll talk about are advanced monitoring, specifically application performance monitoring, and cloud-based load testing. And by using these two technologies together, you're very often able to identify performance issues before they ever affect shoppers. And a key tenet of this approach is the belief that this type of testing should be done in production. Now, there's certainly some inherent challenges in testing in your production environment, but those challenges are far outweighed by the benefits of actually being able to put your production environment under simulated load ahead of, for example, a busy holiday shopping season. And able to identify performance bottlenecks and address those bottlenecks before you ever hit your peak season. Next slide, please. Now, let's talk a little bit more deeply about some of these underlying technologies. So application performance monitoring is a really neat technology. First began emerging about 5 or 6 years ago, and the technology's matured since then. And what these solutions do is they, first of all, they have a process of automatic discovery when it comes to your software topology. So the software, once you deploy it into your environment, actually learns the topology of your software, how your software is actually structured, and then begins monitoring and baselining the performance of individual software components. And then as as your site is used, as it starts to hit load, it will actually alert to any variances in performance for the code that it's actually monitoring. And what's really neat about this technology is it dramatically speeds root cause analysis and, by extension, remediation of some of these hairy issues by actually pinpointing the exact section of code that may be causing the performance challenge for your retailing, your online retailing environment. Now, when used in combination with cloud-based load testing, now I'm almost embarrassed to say that I'm old enough to remember back when we used to order hardware to run load testing scripts against some of our in-house servers, and that process was, first of all, very expensive. It was always very difficult to actually, with any degree of accuracy, actually mirror our production environments. So although we were able to address and identify a number of issues, there were always issues that cropped up in production. And for those reasons, and because it was expensive, not a lot of companies actually did it. Fast forward to today, where you have your choice of a variety of different cloud-based load testing solutions. We actually offer a service here at Tenzing, for example, that can scale to mimic up to 10,000 concurrent users, and actually mimics traffic from a range of different device types and networks and geographies. So it enables you to actually almost exactly mimic how you expect your users to be hitting your site, and more importantly, can be pointed into a production environment during an opportune window, and you can actually cost-effectively load test your production environment ahead of expected peak, and in combination with the application performance monitoring, identify where your Magento code is actually breaking down, and address those areas of code relatively quickly. Next slide, please. Now, there's a case study I'd like to share with you. So, we work with a variety of different retailers here at Tenzing, and one of them happens to be a manufacturer of high-end sunglasses. Actually own a pair myself. They're great sunglasses. And they launched the direct-to-consumer Magento web store a few years ago. And by leveraging these two components, our application performance monitoring and cloud-based load testing, we were actually able to identify 2 code issues with their production environment ahead of their peak summer season. These were 2 sections of code that they were completely unaware of were problematic when it came to the performance of their website. Up until that point, they'd been trying to address those performance issues by throwing more infrastructure at the problem. In a matter of about 2.5 days, they were actually able to fix and test and deploy those fixes to those coding issues. And since that time, their site has consistently delivered sub-2-second page loads across the entire site. So it just gives you one example of the power of using these two technologies in combination to get ahead of problems, and really I think does a great job of illustrating what we mean by proactive maintenance, right? Getting ahead of the problem before it ever becomes a problem for your shoppers. Next slide, please. Now with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Ryan, who's got another case study to share with you. Ryan, it's all yours.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Again, another case study that just fits in tremendously well with everything that we've already discussed from a responsive point of view. One of our customers, Vizio, we're currently working with their creative team and their marketing team to roll out their new responsive site. We call it their responsive web development and design site. That is we're hitting the finish line very, very soon here. It's been a fantastic, fun project to work on. Now, Vizio is not only targeting a wider audience with their new responsive site, but basically what we've endeavored to do is gain a deeper understanding through analysis of their audience through Google Analytics and a number of other analytics packages to understand the nature of the interaction with each visitor based on different device, desktop, tablet, or mobile. And we basically customized the site experience to suit each of these expected interactions based on device. What we've managed to do is through enabling, applying best practice of front-end code, minification, automating, using automated tools, etc., doing load testing in the cloud. We've made sure that we've actually been able to protect load times, page load times, regardless of the amount of traffic. The way we've done that is by really rolling out, based on the approaches that Dave has already gone into some detail on, making sure that the site is not only up, but remains very responsive in terms of the time that it takes to respond, regardless of how much traffic within reason that we throw at it. By making sure that we're doing application performance monitoring, we're able to really spin up servers in the cloud pretty much instantaneously. As a result, what we've managed to do is during average traffic periods, we've actually managed to reduce the server footprint in the cloud for Vizio. And as a result, we've really minimized or reduced, I should rather say, their license fee that they're paying to Magento for the enterprise license. Where they came from was a tremendously bloated bare metal server environment where they were really purchasing football fields of servers to handle spiky traffic. What we've been able to do in the cloud is make sure that we can run on a very small, optimum, efficient footprint and scale accordingly whenever we experience spiky traffic, and we do that automatically. It's a fantastic case study. It's really a testament to staying true to the principles of responsive web development, staying true to the principles of responsive approaches within the cloud, and really just a great case study for everything that we've already spoken about here. That kind of rounds out the case study from my side. I believe we've received a number of questions throughout this webinar. As we jump to the next slide, while we're just collating those questions and preparing to answer some or hopefully all of them, I wanted to just mention some of the services that we offer at Indaba here that really support the initiatives that we've discussed in this webinar. We are all about collaborating, innovating, and growing with our customers and for our customers, specializing in enterprise solutions, e-commerce development, specifically on the Magento platform, digital marketing, and creative design. Where we excel, we make sure that no one department within our company here at Indaba or within our client's company is operating in a vacuum. Responsive is a process, and what that means is you're marketing to a wider audience that has different expectations across different devices, but you have the same objective, is to make sure that they have a consistent brand experience, and at the end of the day, the call to action across all these devices should be the same. get the people to check out with as higher average order value as possible. So we religiously engage with marketing teams, creative teams. The more in sync we are with the company vision as a whole, marketing as a whole, creative as a whole, the more responsive that we can be as a creative agency, a development agency, to make sure that your business is truly responsive and not just your site. I'm going to hand over to Dave to go through some of the offerings that Tenzing has to support what we've discussed here today.
This is where you can find some more information about Tenzing, via phone, web, or email. We're a managed hosting provider that offers Magento solutions both on bare metal and on AWS, fully managed. And one thing that occurred to me as we were winding things down here, and certainly something I think we'll think about adding for the next iteration of this presentation, along with everything else that we've talked about, responsive partnership is really also critically important. And I'd like to also take this opportunity to thank Indaba for joining us on the presentation today. It's when retailers and our development partners like Indaba and Tenzing work together and are responsive to each other's needs, no matter what may be going on with a retailer site, that we very often get the best outcomes. So we'll make sure we add that for the next round, Ryan. Now we've got some questions here. As we begin reading out the first few, feel free to use your chat window in WebEx to shoot any questions that you may have been keeping towards the end of our conversation. We've got a few already, but we're always happy to welcome a few more. The first question here is relates to page load times. I think it's probably one for you, Ryan. How do you protect page load times? Which I think was on the last slide that you talked to.
Yeah, sure. So, just making sure that you adopt the best practices and principles that we already discussed from a front-end point of view, minifying your code from an HTML, from a CSS, from a JavaScript to a URL to everything that we discussed there, and making sure that you are performing adequate load testing, both simulated and on production, so that you have a really solid idea of not only what it takes to break your site, but at what point your site starts to degrade. There's really no point in having a site that is, for all intents and purposes, up, but the page load times are subpar. So people are leaving the site left and right because the experience is so horrible. So your site may as well be down. So we make sure that by making sure that we're load testing and proactively maintaining the site, because making sure that as you roll out more content, as you roll out new products, as marketing rolls out a new campaign, a new promotion, that you're never forgetting the tried and true principles of being responsive, or from a code optimization point of view, from a server optimization point of view. Never forget where you came from a responsive point of view. Again, I'll touch on this towards the end as well, is there is no such thing as set it and forget it. You don't go responsive and then say, okay, great, we're responsive now, the site's going to handle whatever we throw at it. You have to continue going through the rhythm of adopting responsive approaches with everything that you do on your new responsive site. I believe another question that has come through is how do you load test in production? And I think that might be a good one for Dave.
Thank you, Ryan. I guess the short answer to that question is very carefully. But on a serious note, load testing in production is not as scary as it sounds. It's actually a lot scarier not to load test in production and then have an issue hit production that causes a degradation in your site's performance. So some of the best practices that we follow around this is we very carefully construct test scenarios So we'll work with our clients and with our partners like Indaba to identify, the amount and types of traffic that we actually need to model against. And then we very carefully schedule those during historically low periods of activity on the environment. So typically we're doing these, in the early to late evening, sometimes very early in the morning. It depends on the retailer and their audience and when those folks are actually hitting their site, but we definitely pick an off-peak period of time. And we do everything we possibly can to minimize the risk. So we're monitoring the environment in real time, and as soon as we begin to see site performance degrade, we begin to scale back some of that load to ensure that the site doesn't completely go down as a result of the traffic that's being pushed against it. So that's the short man's version of how you do it. I'd be lying to you if I said it was easy, and I'd be lying to you if I said it wasn't complicated. But it's well worth the effort in terms of ensuring that your production environment is up and running. Looks like we have another question here about where we can get some more information on site optimization. That's a pretty straightforward one. If you're interested in site optimization, I'd encourage you to visit our website, tenzing.com, and you want to take a look at our advanced managed services, and one of them is you'll see there's Site Optimizer, which is our Site Optimizer solution. And there's a ton of information and supporting materials there that you can leverage to learn a little bit more about site optimization. Here's another question we have. Will the presentation be able to be downloaded? Yes, you'll all be receiving an email from us after the call today with some information about where you can download the presentation as well as a recorded version of this presentation if you'd like to forward that along to anyone else in your organization. With that, it looks like that's the end of our questions for today. Again, would love to thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate you taking some time out of your busy day. We hope you've learned some interesting techniques here and strategies that you can employ back where you call home and where you do business. And we look forward to speaking with you again soon. Take care.
Yes, and thank you on behalf of Indaba. Thanks to all of our attendees, and thank you to our good partners at Tenzing. I know we really enjoyed putting this together and collaborating on this very important topic in the e-commerce industry as a whole. So thanks, everyone, and I look forward to hearing from you with any other questions you may not have had time to insert in the chat window today.